So in case you didn't know, 2022 is over. It's finished. And I feel like I say this every year, but I actually think it was a pretty good year for movie making. So now it's time to look back at all those movies we saw over the course of the last 12 months and decide which ones are the best and most defining entries of this last year. So without further ado, here are my 10 best movies of 2022. Before we dig deeper, let me know in the comments below, what were your favorite movies of last year? I'm sure your list is going to be very different than mine was. So I want to see what you think represented the best of the best when it came to movies of 2022. And like I said, I think movies were pretty good last year. Legacy sequels, independent films, blockbusters. This year was jam-packed, it had it all. But unfortunately, this is an end of the year list. This is a top 10 list. We can't include them all. I wish we could, but we just can't. So before we get to that number 10 spot, I want to just list off some honorable mentions I think deserve some recognition but just weren't able to crack my top 10 list. So here we go. The Northman, The Outfit, X, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Bardo, Confess Fletch, Deadstream, Triangle of Sadness, The Fabelmans, Hustle, and Weird, the Al Yankovic Story. Love me some Daniel Radcliffe. But seriously, if you're interested in any of the movies I just mentioned, I highly suggest you check them out and give them a watch. I really enjoyed all of those movies. It just so happened that there was 10 movies I enjoyed more than the ones I just mentioned. They weren't able to crack this list. But anyway, here we go. Number 10. Coming in at the tail end of this list is RRR. And I don't even know what there is left to say about this movie to someone that's seen it, but I also don't know what to say about this movie to someone that hasn't watched it yet. It is just an absolutely bonkers and epic blockbuster to the highest degree. And you can see next to me, I have the Raiders of the Lost Ark poster right there. That's my favorite movie of all time. I absolutely love it. One of the reasons I love it so much is I feel like there is something for everybody in that movie. There's action, romance, comedy, drama. And I think there are a lot of similarities with the execution of RRR, and it does it in a super genuine manner. I mean, when I say this movie's off the wall, it is off the wall. I mean, there are scenes where one character will take on thousands of enemies by himself. Sometimes our main characters ride into battle alongside tigers and other wild beasts. And they even have probably the most epic dance battle in cinematic history. And I don't say that lightly, I love my dance fights. But this movie's biggest asset, and what I really enjoy about it, is just how genuine it is and how much heart it has. Like, there are sequences in this movie that are so over the top and ridiculous that it should probably take you right out of the movie and make you glaze over. But the chemistry between our two leads in this story is going to have you invested in every second of this movie's long runtime. When you boil it down, this movie's about two guys from two very different walks of life in this intense friendship that they have and the lengths they're going to go to protect that relationship. You're going to want to watch this movie with some buddies. I've really only seen a handful of other Bollywood films, but this movie has me wanting to expand my horizons a little bit. So if you have any good Bollywood movies you think I should watch, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, I mean, RRR, this is an over-the-top epic. Coming in at number 9 is Avatar: The Way of Water. And I gotta admit, having this movie on my end-of-year list is a big deal for me because I'm historically an Avatar 1 hater. I never liked it. I thought if it didn't have good visuals, no one would care about it. The story's super unoriginal. But after seeing The Way of Water, I mean, I'm ready for 10 more Avatar sequels if James Cameron wants to give me them. I will say though, this movie is so damn long, I had to actively remind myself not to drink anything the entire day when I was gonna go see it, because if I drank anything, I was gonna have to get up and go to the bathroom. I wasn't having that. And I can tell you firsthand, after making that decision, it was definitely the right choice. I mean, seeing this movie in one go in its entirety is priceless. Definitely worth the bladder damage. If you're a big movie fan, I feel like you have to get just a little bit romantic about a movie like this even coming out. I mean, it's been so long since the original, I didn't even know if we were ever gonna see a true Avatar sequel. I mean, it's been 13 years. But you have to respect James Cameron. He's one of the last of his kind to be making these kind of behemoth level blockbusters. He's gonna do what he wants, when he wants, how he wants to do it, and you're just gonna have to deal with it because you know when that movie finally comes out, it's gonna be a smash hit. And if we touch on the story for a second, I'm happy to report they do not mention unobtainium once in this movie, thank God. I mean, the biggest criticism about the first film was obviously the plot and the storyline. This one still isn't an Oscar-worthy screenplay, but it definitely does a lot more in that regard than the first film. This one's a lot more about family. Jake and Neytiri have a bunch of kids now. They have to leave their home, visit different parts of Pandora, meet new Na'vi tribes. vibes. And for the most part of this movie, Jake and Neytiri are on the back burner. They aren't even the main focus. It's their kids who we follow a lot and have to see find their way in this new society and culture. And yeah, I mean, they do get into some just annoying, repetitive kid shit, disobeying constantly. But really, I mean, this movie was an improvement on the first one for me in every aspect. I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. I mean, I feel like it's been years since a film has truly transported me to another world while I was watching it. And I usually hate 3D. I think it sucks a lot of the time. It's a gimmick. But let me tell you, you have to see this one in 3D. Coming in at number 8 is The Menu, and this is a movie that was on my most anticipated list for a long time. I feel like if you hear the plot in passing, you're like, okay, it sounds interesting enough. But if I tell you that Anya Taylor-Joy goes toe-to-toe with an evil chef played by Ralph Fiennes, and it's directed by the guy behind Succession, I mean, what more do you really need to know? The majority of this movie almost takes place in one single room, but it doesn't really feel like it does, which is just a testament to how expertly structured and planned out this movie is. In the manner in which it's filmed is very sleek and meticulous, which is a lot like the subject matter of the actual movie. The painstaking process of assembling these tiny little food dishes, which sounds pretentious as all hell, but I mean, that's the vibe this movie's going for, so it just works. I am a massive Ralph Fiennes fan. I don't think he's ever turned out a bad performance in his entire career. This movie's no different, obviously. He is menacing as all hell as the head chef in this movie. He's a super layered character. They only give us a tiny trail of breadcrumbs to figure out what makes this guy tick, which is perfectly executed to keep him as this like mysterious and powerful central figure that you want to impress, but you're like also afraid of. We all know Anya Taylor-Joy. She's become a star over the last few years, and it's great seeing these two characters kind of have this deadly cat and mouse relationship. And she's kind of us in this movie because she doesn't know a ton about food. Everyone else in the room is an obnoxious foodie, basically, and she doesn't know the difference between a Happy Meal and a $100 steak. So when the chef comes out holding this little plate with a tiny bit of food on it and everyone's oohing and awing, she's like, what the hell is that? This is bullshit. And he does not like being challenged. 2022 had some great satires. This might be the best one. I mean, it was an easy target. This one takes some major shots at the world of fine dining and obnoxious foodies. I have to just get one food pun out there, so please allow me to do it. This is a delicious little thriller. At number 7, we have Barbarian. And the way I've been describing this movie to people that ask me about it is that if Don't Breathe and The Descent had a baby, and The Hills Have Eyes and Malignant had a baby, and the two of them grew up, were lucky enough to find each other and fell in love, and they had a baby, it would be Barbarian, no question. If you haven't heard about this one, it's basically just about a woman that has a job interview in another city, so she books an Airbnb to spend the night, but when she gets there, she realizes it was double booked because there's already a dude staying there at the house. Against her better judgment, and I mean, she doesn't really have better options, she decides to stay there anyway, but quickly realizes having a roommate is not going to be her biggest issue. And that's really all you need to know about this movie. Don't look it up, don't watch any of the trailers if you can help it. If there's one 2022 horror movie to watch completely blind, it's Barbarian. This is kind of like a Tarantino horror movie in a way, and what I mean by that is that it borrows a little bit here and there from a lot of different places. Even though it might seem familiar to you in some aspects, I can guarantee you're not going to be prepared for this insane horror cocktail that this movie delivers up when all of those aspects are in the same movie together. One of the best parts about this film is that the house our main character finds herself in is kind of set up like a circus funhouse. I mean, I wanted them to explore every nook and cranny of this place to see what kind of nightmare fuel might be lurking just right around the corner. The script really sets this one apart from other horror movies that we were given in 2022. It just elevates the whole thing. Before the horror even starts, we're given two very real characters, and the dialogue between Georgiana Campbell and Bill Skarsgård feels authentic, like two strangers that find themselves in this annoying situation would actually talk. And there's just something that feels off in this movie. You're not really sure what you're supposed to be afraid of, but something doesn't feel right. You just can't really put your finger on it until it is staring you in the face. And then when Justin Long is added into this movie, he brings all the laughs. That's one thing that really surprised me, was just how funny of a movie this was too. But yeah, Barbarian is a movie you're gonna want to watch with your buddies. It was constantly surprising me. It was subverting my expectations. Right when I thought I had something figured out, it would throw something else at me from left field and it would just really work. I enjoyed the hell out of this film. My theater was hooting and hollering at every twist and turn. And the best kinds of horror movies are something that make you scared of or question something mundane in your everyday life. When I got home from this movie, I was checking every single room in my house, making sure there was nothing funky going on. Every time I use an Airbnb, I'm going to joke about Barbarian. I'm sure it'll get old very fast. Coming in at number 6 is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Twitter went absolutely bananas over this movie when it came out. If you didn't see this movie somehow, you definitely heard about it from word of mouth over on social media. But it's probably the most accessible artsy film maybe ever, at least in the last couple decades, and it's a lock for the most unique and creative movie of 2022. I mean, it's a multiverse movie, it's a martial arts movie, it's a family movie, it's a romance, it's a comedy. Not many movies like this come out very often that spread themselves so thin across so many ideas and themes and genres and are somehow able to make it work in this cohesive of a package. This is probably the best movie you can trick someone that doesn't think they like artsy movies into watching. Like, it definitely has an agenda, it has all these themes it wants to cover and all these different ideas it wants to express, but it's all so entertaining and over the top, you won't really know you're digesting it until it's way too late. The viewer is just suckered in. Everybody that's in this movie absolutely kills it. The whole cast from front to back, I love everything that they're doing. From Michelle Yeoh all the way down to Jamie Lee Curtis, you can tell they're just having so much fun. It really comes through in their performance because they're making this movie they probably never thought they'd have a chance to make. This is a very bizarre and niche type of movie. This is a movie that definitely requires subsequent rewatches. I mean, it's just pulling you in so many different directions at such a fast pace. You don't even have enough time to process everything this movie is trying to tell you. I mean, I definitely need to rewatch it. I've only seen it one time at the theater. I know, shame on me. Film Twitter is going to come for my head, but I definitely need to rewatch this, and I will happily do so. Coming in at number 5 is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I can't believe I'm saying that. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Shrek 1 and 2. I even liked the last Puss in Boots movie. I mean, hell, I even wrote a 15-page college paper about how the first Shrek movie is a masterpiece. Got an A on it too, thank you very much. So I have a very deep and nostalgic Shrek fandom, but I was not expecting in a million years this movie to be this good. This is probably the most mature movie that DreamWorks has ever made. I mean, the themes are heavy in this one. Puss is down to his last life, so he's having a full-blown identity crisis. He's obsessed with getting his lives back and thinks that he's nothing without them. I mean, this is a guy that's always yelling, "The legend will never die," but here he is forced to face a reality where the opposite is a real possibility. And this is one where, like, it is hard to keep a straight face whenever I explain it to people. I'm talking about death and mortality. I mean, this is a Puss in Boots movie, but I promise you I'm telling you the truth. This movie is heavy. My favorite type of animated films are the ones that can stand side by side with legitimate entries in certain genres. It's like Guillermo del Toro says, like, animation is not a genre. In this movie is a legitimate Western. It follows a once fearless desperado who goes on one last adventure even though he's facing certain death. I absolutely love this movie. It was such a great surprise. I can't wait to go see it again. I mean, the visuals were hypnotic this time around. They did like a 2D, 3D mix like Into the Spider-Verse. The voice cast was awesome. They all really bring it. And I mean, oh, holy shit, the villain of this movie did not need to go this hard. He is so scary. He is going to scare the piss out of little kids for months. This movie gave me absolutely everything I could have wanted out of it and more. It is the best animated movie of 2022. It is a smash hit for any fans of the Shrek franchise. Go see this one in theaters while you still can. Give it your money. I need more, man. Coming in at number 4 is The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Now, say what you will about Nicolas Cage. Maybe he's not your cup of tea, but you'll never be able to say he gives anything less than 110% with every project he takes on. A lack of enthusiasm is not this guy's issue. Whether you like him or not, he's one of the most memorable and relevant actors working today, and he's not afraid to take on any role. Personally, I love the guy. I've been defending his work for decades, and I truly believe his catalog is so vast that there is a Nick Cage movie for every type of movie fan. I mean, you've got National Treasure, Adaptation, Kick-Ass, Con Air. Those are just a couple examples of how this guy throws his hat in the ring for any genre-specific project that comes his way. And when I heard they were making a surrealist film about a cash-strapped version of Nicolas Cage that was working with the CIA to help topple a drug cartel, I mean, God, I couldn't have added that to my watch list fast enough. I have to give props to Lionsgate for even taking a crack at a movie like this. I mean, this movie is as sporadic and unpredictable as Nicolas Cage is himself. It took a lot of nuance and a massive understanding of the assignment at hand here to make sure this movie wasn't just a total dud. Like, honestly, I feel like 9 times out of 10, this movie should have ended up being an utter disaster. But luckily for us, they tread that self-aware and meta line to perfection. They really just, like, caught lightning in a bottle here. Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal are at the peak of their game in this movie. They are awesome as this kind of buddy comedy duo. They play off of each other really well. I felt like I was watching Paul Rudd and Jason Segel and I Love You Man all over again. And after you see this movie, you're gonna want to call your best buddy and say you love them. What surprised me the most was how much this movie actually had to say. I mean, I was expecting a silly celebration of Nicolas Cage's filmography. What I wasn't expecting was a celebration of cinema and filmmaking as a whole, too. There are numerous scenes in this movie, and cinephiles will relate to this deeply, where our two main characters talk about how your idea of the best film doesn't have to match up with your idea of your favorite film. Like, you can say that Shawshank Redemption is the best movie ever made, but if you have more of an emotional connection and cry like a baby every time you see Click with Adam Sandler, that doesn't make you any less of a movie fan. That means you're a human being. It's all about taking the guilty out of guilty pleasure and being true to oneself. It's just hilarious that it's this movie that explores that and ends up being so thought-provoking. This movie is just a total wild ride. It is a must-watch for anyone that considers themselves a Nicolas Cage fan. I had a blast with it. I don't know if I laughed more at any other movie this year. I can't wait to rewatch it. I've already seen it a couple times. You're going to want to rewatch this one too. Coming in at number 3 is The Banshees of Inisherin. And on paper, this is probably the simplest movie on this entire end of the year list. It's about two best friends in Ireland 100 years ago, and one day one of them wakes up and just doesn't want to be friends with the other one anymore. Obviously, we dive deeper in the film, but that's pretty much the whole plot. Colin Farrell is as consistent as he always is. I mean, he might have had the best year out of any actor. He came out with this. He came out with 13 Lives, After Yang, The Batman. He was unbelievable this year. And I'm praying with Banshees, he gets his first Oscar nomination and obviously his first win. But a really good performance is only able to be really good if you have other solid actors to bounce it off of. And luckily for us, Brendan Gleeson is opposite Colin Farrell. He is fantastic as always. I think he's one of the most underrated actors working today. And it's just a blessing that we get this In Bruges team up again with Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, and our director, Martin McDonagh. This is one of those movies where it seems on the surface to not really say much of anything at all, but once you dig a little bit deeper, it has a ton to say. And uncovering some of the dark mysteries behind this boring and old Irish town is part of the reason why this movie is so successful. So I'm not going to delve into the details there past the bare bones plot I already gave you. I know it's not much to go off of, but just trust me, if you take this journey, it is well worth it. And this movie is funny as hell. Martin McDonagh is great at dark comedy. He's great at also making you feel bad for some of the stuff you're laughing at, but you just can't help it. This movie is just such a tight and complete package in all regards. I mean, it is well acted, well written, and well directed. It might be my most recommended movie in 2022. When people are looking for something to stream, they can't find a movie, I always ask if they've seen Banshees. If you're a fan of any of Martin McDonagh's movies, you gotta check this one out. Coming in at number 2 is The Batman. And this was my most anticipated movie of 2022 for a couple of different reasons. Maybe it was Robert Pattinson rocking the cowl, or having Matt Reeves behind the camera, or even having Michael Giacchino handling the score, but this thing just ended up becoming a cinematic monster that couldn't be ignored. And I'm happy to report, after it's all said and done, this is by far my favorite Batman movie ever made. We will never get a more comic-accurate portrayal of Batman than in this movie. I mean, it's dark, it's gritty, it's raw. This is exactly how an accurate Batman movie should feel. And if you love the comics and the graphic novels, you had an absolute field day with this movie, because they intertwine parts of different stories like Year One, The Long Halloween, and others to craft this 3-hour intro to our new Batman. I mean, I loved it. Arguably, the most exciting thing about this movie is that at the end of the day, it's a true noir film. It's got a little bit of Seven, Chinatown, Blade Runner, and Saw in it. 4 movies I never thought I would mention in the same sentence as a Batman movie they gave us earlier this year. I just never thought they would give us the true-to-form detective portrayal up on the big screen. Obviously, super pumped I was wrong about that. This movie now contains my favorite on-screen iterations of Batman, Catwoman, the Riddler, and the Penguin. Pattinson just does a great job with this role, and he's set up for success easily by just deriving his character right from the beloved source material. Zoe Kravitz and Paul Dano both do an awesome job here, but I was honestly shocked by how much I loved Colin Farrell as the Penguin. I mean, he was so unrecognizable in this role. If you didn't just see a hint of what he usually looked like in the eyes every once in a while, there's no way you'd believe that was him under all of that makeup and prosthetics. This movie has thrilled comic book fans, noir movie fans, detective movie fans, and every other fan in between. I'll never forget the feeling of opening night, the chills I got on the back of my neck the first time we see Batman, and the first time the Batmobile is powered up. Woo! Coming in at number 1 on the list is, of course, Top Gun Maverick. And I mean, I feel like everyone on the planet knows this at this point, but this movie had no business being this good. These Hollywood sequels that come out decades after the original movie always worry me. It always seems like what they do when they run out of ideas and just want to rebrand something that was popular in the past. So us movie fans have rightfully become pretty skeptical of sequels, reboots, and modern retellings. But once we hear that iconic Top Gun bell sound effect and see Maverick for the first time again, all those worries just washed away. Top Gun Maverick not only lived up to the hype, it surpasses the original movie in every single possible aspect. I mean, the action sequences in this movie are absolutely incredible. They are pure cinematic blockbuster brilliance. I don't think there's a conclusion to a movie that I've seen in years that is this high-octane, thrilling, and adrenaline-pumping. Like, you feel like you're on a goddamn roller coaster, anxious about what's to come next, but you can't help yourself. You're just having such a damn good time while you're on it. The best decision these guys could have made was taking their sweet time to figure out the best way to capture and film all of the aerial sequences and the jet combat. I mean, it really translates well and authentically to the audience. Every time I saw this movie in theaters, everyone was fist pumping by the movie's climax. I mean, you can't help yourself. You get carried away. You feel that rumble in your chest when those jets really power up. Another thing this movie does really well that usually legacy sequels do not is that they actually make us care about this new batch of recruits. A lot of the times when a studio is revitalizing a franchise like this after so many years, they try to add new blood into the mix to kind of attract a younger fan base and to get that younger demographic to go see it in theaters. And they also include the old characters from the original so that the diehards will show up as well. But a lot of the time, the vibes of those two sets of characters just do not mesh well at all. I honestly believe this is a 1 in a billion example of when this actually works inside of a legacy sequel. I actually cared about the future of these young pilots, and that's thanks to the performances by Miles Teller and Glenn Powell, mixed with the consistency of Tom Cruise and the emotional gut punch of Val Kilmer. This movie is just so good because it's not trying to be anything that it's not. It knows what it is. It's a rousing crowd pleaser that's going to get people up on their feet and want to cheer. I'll never forget, I got to see this movie early and I took my dad to go see it. You could just kind of tell the theater was just filled with dads and sons. It was a great environment to see this movie for the first time. And when we left, when it was over, I was like, I think I absolutely loved that. And we've just been gushing about this movie ever since. I can't think of a better and more deserving movie to take the number 1 spot on my list here than Top Gun Maverick. I mean, this is why we go to the movies in the first place. Ugh, that was not an easy list to make. There were so many good movies to choose from last year. But like I said, that's just my list. So I want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments below what movies made your top 10 of 2022. I'm sure it's a very different list than mine. But now we're on to 2023. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you guys at the next video.